So much of my life has been, connected with great challenges and also very great financial, fears. And so I am truly also enjoying this part where I now financially am a lot more secure. And if I feel, I want to do something, I actually have the means to say, okay, I am going to take off this weekend or I am going to this retreat. And so this second or this next part of my life is really connected to also creating joy and enjoying the beautiful things I have around me.
Welcome to Midlife Dialogues, where we talk to people 50 and over who are doing interesting things with their lives. And today we're talking to Petra Wiesenbauer. Welcome, Petra. It is so nice to talk to you.
It's wonderful to be here today, Leslie.
Thank you. I want to start by asking you to tell us where you grew up. Let's set you in time and space here.
I'm originally from Germany, and I grew up in the southern area of Germany, in Bavaria, close to the Alps. And for many people, I would say they associate with that area beer and bratwurst.
When did you leave Germany and why?
After graduating from high school, I went to college and I did my undergraduate, and then I took a year off from college and went traveling. And during that travel, I spent some time on the US mainland. I went to Australia, New Zealand, and on the way back to Germany, I spent some time in Hawaii.
And how did you end up staying in Hawaii? How did that come about?
During the travels, I spent about 6 weeks on the Big Island, and I had a wonderful time. And it was really remarkable, some of the experiences I had during that time, especially in Pololu Valley and also in the Mauna Kea area up on Pu'uhuluhulu. And it was very spiritual. And so I had this dream that one day I would come back to Hawaii and live on the Big Island. And it took me about 10 years to come back to the Big Island to live here.
Oh, I see. But you do seem to be someone who makes your plans and your dreams happen. So that's foreshadowing. And I know for many years you ran a very successful B&B here on the Big Island. Tell us just briefly about that.
So part of this dream of going to Hawaii was to, at some point, open a bed and breakfast to offer other travelers a cozy home and a great place to stay and experience the surroundings and the culture. And so it was always part of the plan. After a couple of years on Oahu, we bought a house in Leilani Estates, and we turned this house into a bed and breakfast.
And I know it was just lovely. People absolutely loved it. So you were very successful with that, I think.
Yeah.
How long did you have that place?
I had the bed and breakfast for 18 years.
That beautiful home had a rather inauspicious ending. Tell us about that.
Yes, so there was actually several times when this home was threatened by natural events. So the first time we were very worried was in 2014 when the lava was flowing towards Pahoa. And there was this great fear that the back section of Puna would be cut off by the lava flow going right through Pahoa. And so we were very concerned. And of course, at the time, the advisory from the travel industry was for people to not go into this area. And so it was very difficult for us at the time. Yes.
Right.
And that was
Crazy.
Not a very hopeful thought. This was quite challenging. And then, of course, just shortly thereafter, we had Hurricane Iselle come through our area.
Oh, that's right.
And then in 2018, the lava it came literally out of the ground in Leilani. One street down from us was the first fissure that opened up.
That was something else, seeing pictures, and you were firsthand, but seeing lava coming up in residential neighborhoods through the street that runs down between rows of houses. Astonishing.
Yes.
And then you did end up having to leave there and your house burnt down.
Yeah. So it's going to be almost 6 years, May 3rd, when we evacuated.
And so what I'm so interested in too is the fact that you went back to school when you did and you just completely turned your life around, started a whole new career. How old were you, if you don't mind me asking, when you went back to school?
So I was 50 years old when I went back to school. It was definitely a decision that had several purposes. I, first of all, realized, that the hospitality hospitality industry could be very volatile and unstable. And so I needed, since we were a single parent family, I needed to have stable income. I decided, that I needed a leg to stand on. And so that was one of the decisions. And I had always really wanted to be a therapist all my life. And I found a way through a program that was offered here in Hilo through Argosy University as a weekend program to be able to go back to school. Then, of course, I was also thinking into the future as a preparation of a new and different career once my children would graduate from school and leave home, because I knew I was not going to do the bed and breakfast, for the rest of my life. And so this offered, a really great opportunity for me to really do something completely different that I knew I would totally love.
Well, that's great. That's great. Now tell me, what is the degree actually that you got?
I have a master's in marriage and family therapy. And in the meantime, I have also my license. And for the last 2 years, I have opened my private practice in Pahua.
That's terrific. Tell me about making that decision to go back to school. Was that a hard decision? Was it an easy decision? Was it scary? Was it exciting?
It was actually quite scary because the last time I had been, in grad school was in 1991. So this was literally like 25 years earlier. The big fear for me was that at 50, you may not be able to be good at this and to be able to really learn all of it and pass all the exams and compete with younger people. But it turned out that it was a completely different learning experience.
What do you mean by that?
When I went to school with my master's in my early 20s, there was so much that I didn't know about life. And many topics or subjects, you study them, you sort of like, you just cram them into your brain to pass a test. And then, 3 weeks later, you don't remember, what you studied. But when you go back at an older age, it's very different because you have such a huge foundation and base of knowledge and life experience. And with everything I learned in my program, I felt like it was almost like the Library of Congress. I knew exactly, where to file this new information because it then connected, with so much I already knew about life. And so it was a very different learning. I didn't have to learn anything by heart or anything like that. It all made total sense and totally integrated in what I actually already knew.
Yeah, that makes good sense. That's really interesting. I bet it is completely different to get a degree in your 50s than in your 20s. I can see that. What was your first master's degree in?
Master's in business administration.
So tell me about your life now, your career and, the job, how it's going, having your own practice. What's that like?
So after I finished, my master's, I worked for a nonprofit organization for 6 years. I worked for Child and Family Service, and most of the clients that we had were referrals from Child Welfare Service and the judiciary. And so all of the families I worked with either had domestic violence background or sexual abuse background. And so much of it was really working with families and individuals or children with deep trauma background. And when you work for an agency, of course, you're very bound by contractual agreements and the population that you're serving. And this is very different now with me working in private practice. Of course, I have to follow legal requirements and I have to obey by ethics guidelines and all of that. But I can literally work with my clients based on the approaches and modalities that are really resonating with my beliefs in life and also with the things that can be very helpful for clients instead of having to follow a very rigid or regimented model or concept.
Yeah, it must be amazing to feel like you're doing something that can help families so much.
Yes, it
Yeah.
feels wonderful to see, how families, individuals, and children, can really come out of traumatic situations or long time childhood experiences and then open up their lives in a way where they find so much more inner freedom and peace and are also able to, change the patterns that they have in their relationships and experience a very different, dynamic in their families and relationships.
Are you able to see that with some families that you work with? I mean, I'm just thinking maybe you make a difference, but it kind of happens over time and it happens at home. Or do you actually see people changing in their lives, getting easier and happier?
Yes, I can definitely, especially, if people come with childhood trauma, it may take, a while before you really see changes. But most people, before they come into therapy, they are at a point where they recognize for themselves that they cannot or do not want to continue the way they have. Most of the time, when we grow up in our families, we don't really, as children, have reference points, of what's normal and what's not normal. And so what we experience in the families is our normal. And we adapt and we develop patterns that help us best to survive or cope with whatever is there. And what happens then, these coping strategies and patterns are things we then carry with us into our lives. And we keep attracting people that have familiar patterns. And we keep repeating similar dynamics that we experience in our families of origin until we get to a point where we say, I can't do this anymore and I really want to change. Or this is the third relationship that's now breaking apart. And what can I do to make a difference for myself? And this is usually when people come to therapy. And then at the beginning, we will assess initially, what is the situation right now, but I also always go back to how people grew up because that's really the origin for so much of what we experience in our lives.
Right. That makes sense.
Yeah, and then we work, on these, first of all, identifying and recognizing these patterns, and then really looking where people re-implemented them, and then we look at how we can change them.
Yeah, that's a very valuable thing to do.
Mm-hmm.
What do your kids think about you having done this, gone back to school and started this whole new career? They must be proud of you. What do they say?
They are very proud of me. And of course, for them, they were still in school when I went to school. And so it was really also very motivating for all of us to see how everybody was moving forward and progressing with our school. And for them, it was very validating to see, that I accomplished this and really literally also started a new career.
What a role model you were for them. That's such a turning point in their lives when they were getting ready to go out and go on with their lives too.
Yes, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
So you've achieved this big goal of getting your education and your license and starting your own practice. Do you have other goals or are you there? Are you doing exactly what you want to be doing?
Well, part of this decision to go back to school was, of course, the preparation for the time when my children would move into their own lives. And so I am now, or all three of us are now at a point in time where my son lives on Maui with his girlfriend. My daughter lives on the East Coast going to college, and I am here in Pahoa, with my own practice. And so it is really for me about now stepping into my own life. And that, of course, is not just my work, but really also creating a bigger purpose for my life and connecting with, a greater context. And there are many things, I really want to do. I want to go travel. I really want to also enjoy life because so much of my life has been, connected with great challenges and also very great financial, fears. And so I am truly also enjoying this part where I now financially am a lot more secure. And if I feel, I want to do something, I actually have the means to say, okay, I am going to take off this weekend or I am going to this retreat. And so this second or this next part of of my life is really connected to also creating joy and, yeah, enjoying the beautiful things I have around me.
Oh, that's wonderful. That's just
Mhm.
wonderful. Well, I think it's so great that you have done that. It's so inspiring to talk to people of any age, but especially older people who just take the bull by the horns and change their lives to be the way they want it to be. And I think it's just great. So congratulations on reshaping your life and being so happy with what you're doing. Thank you so much, Petra. It's so nice talking to you. And thank you everyone else for listening to Midlife Dialogues, and we will see you next time.